and I'm going to take first crack at that one, and we'll go down the line. Based on what I've heard here tonight, what I've had conversations with others about for a number of weeks, I would like to make a motion that this board opt out of state-mandated testing beginning immediately for the benefits of administrators, teachers, and most importantly, students whose educational growth has not been enhanced as a result of such testing. It's the motion I put on the floor.
I second that motion.
May we have discussion? Mrs. Morgan.
I would like to amend the motion to direct the superintendent to present a recommendation on the issue of the main motion to the board as part of the agenda at the next meeting to include, as what has already been stated, a plan of action.
Other comments? Mr. Armstrong?
You need a second first, sir, before that can be discussed.
I second it.
Amendments made by Ms. Morgan, seconded by Mrs. Dozier. We need to take that one up first.
Yes, discussion on the proposed amendment. Yes, sir.
Okay. Discussion on the proposed amendment to delay until the superintendent provides more data. I believe I'm restating that correctly.
It's not about data. It's about presenting a plan of action for this board.
And I believe, if I may,
Yes.
the board and the community wants to take any kind of action. You do need to have a plan in place. And obviously this is an issue that has been near and dear to many of our hearts. And in order to address this issue of opting out of testing, we do not want to do anything that would put district funding in jeopardy. I think everyone in the audience would agree with that. We do not want to put any student in jeopardy that could jeopardize their ability to graduate, and a plan is an absolute must.
All right.
I have some language which would advocate for parents to have the right, without forcing the district to pay for alternative assignments during the primary testing dates when virtually every school employee is already assisting with testing responsibilities. It would eliminate any possible penalties to the student based upon attendance or truancy just for the absences due to opting out, and would allow the student to attend school during retesting day without requiring the district to have students tested. The solution would avoid any argument over the school board setting a policy that is directly in conflict with the current law that mandates testing and faces dozens of other state law provisions, such as school grading is affected, teacher pay performance is affected, teacher evaluations are affected, student promotion to 4th grade is affected, and high school graduation, and the list goes on. And upon different facets of the state testing program, I propose, and Mr. Martin, I don't know if this is an amendment to the amendment or what, but parent choice to opt out of state accountability testing. I move that we empower the parents to opt out of state accountability testing by both notifying the district of this status and keeping their children home during the initial testing day without any adverse impact to their attendance or truancy status. Also, entitle the parents who have proactively noticed the district that they wish to opt out of state accountability testing to send their children to school during all retesting days without requiring the district to have students tested.
Discussion?
Well, we've got to vote on amendments.
Well,
Or we've got to have seconds.
let me provide advice if I may, sir. Of course, you have a main motion on the floor. You have a motion to amend, and now you have a motion to amend that amendment. You have not received a second for that motion to amend the amendment yet. Until you have a second, there's no grounds for discussion at this
Is there a
point.
second to the amendment to the amendment? Yeah, that motion dies for lack of a second.
And you're back to discussion on the motion to amend.
You further, Ms. Morgan, can you further articulate your motion?
I support Florida standards because I think it's important that our students demonstrate proficiency and progress on nationally normed, reliable, valid tests. I support accountability for students, teachers, schools, the district. The problem that we have before us is that the instrument that's been imposed upon us by the Department of Education and will be imposed in the future or for this school year, to my knowledge, has not been demonstrated to be nationally normed nor demonstrated to be valid or reliable in terms of demonstrating student proficiency. So I believe that as a district, if we are going to be a world-class school system, and if we are going to meet each student or enable each student to meet their highest potential, we have to demonstrate that we are delivering a quality education that is comparable to what is being delivered everywhere else. And until we as a district have a replacement that does that for our students, I am reluctant to support opting out. Now, my amendment asks that the superintendent come back to us with a plan, which I think would have several parts. One would be a plan for this board to appeal directly to the Department of Education about the testing and say, in effect, without relief, we may be obligated to opt out, but we're not prepared to do it without a response from the Department of Education at this time. But I also think that the superintendent has to talk to us about how we will assess students, how those assessments will align with various other mandates that the state has imposed upon us, such as VAM. So I just don't think we are ready at this point to opt out because, as someone has already said, we need a plan, and that's why I have asked for the amendment, and the amendment asks that the superintendent work with us to prepare a plan.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes, and I wanted to introduce my colleagues to a couple of hundred close friends of mine I brought tonight. So let me read you something. Sometimes it takes an act of civil disobedience to move forward. While we must explore consequences, we cannot allow the fear, keyword fear, to hold us back. Palm Beach County Board Member Karen Brill. Palm Beach County, I believe it was last week, brought up what Lee County did. And when I start looking into it, there's different counties out there as well. Several who's talking about doing the same thing. Somebody asked me not too long ago, can you give me a reason why you're doing this? No, I can't give you a reason. I can give you 87,000 reasons. We talk about, what are we going to do to subsidize this test? I have teachers here. I have a superintendent here. I have very, very intelligent people who can formulate the test for us, what we need. They know where these students need to be. I'm not against accountability, never have been. What I'm against is all the testing. Again and again and again. And what I don't think people understand is I crunched the numbers. I've looked at these again and again. A very conservative figure. It cost this district $11 $11.2 million, and that is conservative. If I was going to dive into this a little deeper, we would probably be spending around $20 million. Now think about what we could do with that kind of money back in our classrooms. So, can we develop our own test in time for the end of the year? Yeah, I think we can. We have the capability. We have the people. In 4 years that I've come to this board, or I've been on the board, and the year prior to that, I don't remember seeing this many people engaged. We wanted people to be engaged in this school district. Well, we got them. They're here. They're not going nowhere. They want to be here for a reason. And it's time that we take the stance and take the lead, not only in this state, in this country, and we take this school district back. You know, I was in 1776, on December 16th, our forefathers stood up against the law. And that day, that was called the Boston Tea Party, and they made a statement. Well, as far as I'm concerned, we can call this high-stakes testing Tea Party. We got the Caloosahatchee River. Let's toss it in there. Done. We will take this county back. So, the amendment to the motion, I won't agree with. Your original motion, you have my full support. And I think a few hundred close to my friends will probably agree with me on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I have just a couple of questions before I give my comments. Mrs. Morgan, are you proposing a time certain on your amendment to the motion?
Sure.
And what would that be?
Let's say, Superintendent Graham, what would you suggest? I mean, you understand.
I think it's unrealistic to expect a plan to replace everything that's tied to testing right now in 2 weeks.
Okay.
That's my initial response to that. I'm unsure it's realistic to do in 2 months, but you all will decide the timing of it. But to have it by the next board meeting is unrealistic. That's the best I can give you.
Okay. Well, this is the end of August, so end of October?
If that's what the board directs, that's what I'll do.
I'm happy to set a date that gives the staff and you
This
time.
involves way more than the staff and me. That's the issue.
I understand.
The state is, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, the state will have to have. The state will have some say about, because they'll have to accept the plan for our children to not be hurt. So the variable for me that's most questionable is how long it will take for them to respond.
Well, I think we have to give them a deadline. I mean, they don't give us much of an option to say yay or nay when it comes to their work. So I'm perfectly happy to say the second meeting in October, amend my, well, I'm not, just rephrase my amendment to say postpone or.
Understand this puts teachers in more limbo than they are right now, as far as knowing what we're going to be using. So, if they're...
Excuse me, Mr. Martin? Excuse me, Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Not finished yet.
Yes.
I'm hearing everything delayed, so I apologize. As far as Ms. Morgan's amendment goes, I agree with Mrs. Morgan that we would be irresponsible to do something without a plan. I agree with every parent in the room. I think that the testing that we have now is not in the best interest of students. It's not that I do not agree with the parents. Please do not think that. However, we cannot work without a plan. We cannot. That would be irresponsible. That is not why we are elected to sit in those positions and make decisions. Board members, all of you, I urge you, let's not make a knee-jerk decision tonight, because this is something, as I said before, I was at the Glenn Beck show at the Bell Tower. I heard everything that's going on across the nation. I agree with what's going on across the nation, but we must have a plan. We had a state representative there tonight. I don't know if Representative Fitzenhagen is still in the room or not, but it would be irresponsible on our part to, yes, we have 87,000 students. We have 200 parents strong in the audience. I thank each and every one of you for being there. I thank you for being so passionate about this. And I want all of you to join together with us to let the legislators know that we've got to do something. But I also urge all of you, please, let's do it with a plan. Let's do what's in the best interest of all students. Let's do not do anything that could jeopardize any student's possibility of graduating, possibility of being promoted from 3rd grade to 4th grade. As the state laws read right now, both of those groups could be jeopardized. So I urge each one of my fellow board members tonight, I am pleading with you, let's do it sensibly. Let's do it with a plan. Let's don't just simply say we're going to opt out. That is not the right way to go.
Hey, sure.
Thank you.
All right, that's enough.
I appreciate the opportunity to continue with my questions and my comments. Questions are for Dr. Graham. This coming school year, 2014-15, what is our status with the school grading and the assessment of teachers connected with standardized testing?
Currently, we've been told that districts will be held harmless for there to be any punitive action related to test scores.
Excuse me, I'm not hearing anything Dr. Graham is saying.
Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Currently, we've been told that schools and districts will be held harmless. As far as a clear definition of what that means, we're still waiting.
Okay, so then excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, please. So for this school year, we should be held harmless as far as teacher evaluation and school grades are going.
Yes, they will still be given. They will still be given,
Right.
but for instance, if a school would become a DA school, that wouldn't happen.
Okay, so then the consequences right now, we're still going to administer the test, but the consequences would not be there for those two issues. Excuse me, may I please?
All right, well, I'm going to clear out the hall if this doesn't stop. We're trying to have a discussion up here about something very critically important to all of you and under great consideration by 5 people.
I'm trying to
Please
ascertain
hold it down.
Thank you. And I'm trying to ascertain if we have a window of opportunity here. So please bear with me.
Ms. Fisher,
yes.
the held harmless, Mr. Martin just clarified again, it's the school grade and it's the turnaround schools. That's the verification we've got.
Only
At
for
this
those.
point, that's what we've been told.
Okay. Okay. And nothing regarding teacher evaluations?
Not.
Okay. And Mr. Martin, I have, in the event that we did vote to opt out now, what would we immediately and for certain lose from the state in terms of funding to be able to run our schools? I mean, would it be all funding? And are some of our federal grants in jeopardy?
Jeopardy, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Immediate effects. There are no immediate effects outlined in statute.
Okay.
There are provisions that provide authority for the State Board of Education to take action to withhold funding based upon failure to comply with law.
Right.
There are no statutes that would impose immediate penalties.
Right. And then just to reiterate, another discussion that you and I had regarding consequences or ramifications for board members who do not uphold the law. What would be a potential consequence or ramification?
Well, the governor certainly has authority to remove public officers, including county officers such as school board members, from office based upon mis or malfeasance in the performance of their duties.
Okay, thank you for that. As I listened to the speakers tonight, I was reminded of several situations that I personally experienced, as I have had 4 children go through Lee County schools when we didn't have No Child Left Behind and all of this testing. And I have 8 grandchildren, 4 of whom have graduated, 4 of whom are still in the school district. So I see the difference personally. I have one granddaughter who's turning 21 years old and who still is psychologically impacted by failing FCAT in 3rd grade. So I understand what you're saying on a personal note also. And I am listening to you, and I think we might have a window of opportunity. And I think that we need to continue this discussion, because I also know that we cannot, as elected constitutional officers, be irresponsible. And we have to make sure that whatever we do is in the best interest of the children. And I see people shaking their heads. And I understand that there is a lot of passion here. And I understand the personal experiences. Believe me, I do. So if we can please continue and come to an agreement. I think that this is the time to take a stand. But shouldn't we have a plan? Should we not have a plan? And in order to make that plan, we need your help. And I know that sitting in this audience, there is a wealth of information, and there are multiple suggestions. Now, the big issue, as I'm seeing it right now, is the time. That you're feeling we don't have a month or 2. And that the superintendent has advised us that it would be not realistic to think that we could make a plan in a week or 2. And I understand why. I know how much work and research Mr. Martin has done on this to provide us information about, we have been looking into this. We have been reading. We have been contacting people and doing research. We've been listening to you and reading the information that you have provided us. So please understand that this is not an easy decision. But I understand that this is a window of opportunity, and that we have people here, and we know there's other support out there. So I think we need to continue this conversation and come up with something concrete that we can do that is going to be in the best interest of the children of Lee County.
Okay, so, Ms. Morgan, you want the floor still?
I'll yield.
I thought I missed it.
No, I was going to ask Mrs. Morgan then about the amendment. Are you still suggesting that we amend that motion that Mr. Scott made to give the superintendent and staff an opportunity to make a plan till October, to the second meeting in October? My question is then what happens now? I mean, kids and teachers are in school now. Parents are taking their kids to school, so the first testing occurrences are in October, am I correct?
Makeups are. And there are progress monitoring that begin. I'm going to tell you that to develop a plan now, and people don't want to hear this, but to develop a plan now for this year makes it worse than what we've got right now. Because there is... While we know very little about the air test, we would know even less about what we would create. It takes money, it takes time, it takes expertise. If you're going to talk about something that's normed and valid, there are many, many steps to this process. And I said 2 weeks ago, I am not in disagreement that Florida's over the top with testing. But the reality is that's the framework in which we work right now. And there is a lot this energy could do to get things changed. The point has been made in Tallahassee. I can assure you of that by the phone calls I've gotten for the last 2 weeks. DOE is listening. Senators are listening. Representatives are listening. And so...
All right, one more time, and I'm going to clear the room out.
So I'm very concerned that and you all have said this one way or another, most of you, that we don't want to rush into doing something. This will hurt children. There is no way around it. Teachers will have no idea where to go, because if we opt out, are we opting out of the standards? Are we just opting out of the assessments? Are we going to pick and choose? Are we no longer going to do advanced placement? Do we just close our ACE programs and our IB programs? You're talking about a lot of elements that nobody's really had time to think about. And I understand the frustration, I do, because I was a principal, I was a teacher when the FCAT first started. This is not new frustration. So I want teachers to understand I want to help them as well. We all want to do the right thing for teachers and students and parents, I get it. But I'm just, you asked me to give you my best thinking, and my best thinking is that this is probably a worse way to go about it at this point. I think we need to be thoughtful, intentional, and if you say we need to have a plan by next year, and we go to DOE and say we're coming up with our own plan, and that may give other districts time to do the same thing, that's a very different conversation than saying we're going to come up with something now so that we can use it this year. It's going to put us in a much more challenging place than we already are, because we won't know any more about that than we know about the air test. That's my thought as you all are talking.
Well, I guess what I would say is we're still, in October, we would still be in a position to opt out of air and not have an assessment at all, which is what, I mean, we're asking the state not to do air, in which case there's no replacement for air, and we won't have a replacement for air. So I'm not saying that we need to have a replacement. I'm just saying that I think assessments are really important.
I agree.
And I think any plan that we embark on should include a conversation with the people who are directing us before we make a final decision.
And I'm saying I'm struggling to commit to a timeline because they're part of the equation. Mm-hmm. That's
yeah,
to be honest. And I also think you all really need to be talking to the School Boards Association. Mm-hmm. There's power in numbers. I have already had a conversation with several superintendents and the Superintendents Association. We meet at the end of September. I have talked with the commissioner. I mean, this conversation is happening statewide. And I'm not sure we're going to make anything come of that any quicker. All we're going to do at this point is hurt our district. I really, really believe that, whether we like it or not. Yeah, it's political. That's the reality. And I'm very, very concerned about us. And somebody said to me a week or so ago, are you afraid to take a risk? I've taken lots of risks in my career and in my personal life, but they've been my risks personally. They haven't been about children that now I'm responsible for. And so it concerns me to just make a rash decision. It concerns me greatly for this district.
Well, I'm concerned about putting it back on the State Department of Education to make a decision, because they can't make a decision about anything.
No, I'm suggesting that there be a dialogue that says we're serious, we've had enough. There has to be a better way. I don't think anybody's ever really, I think we've all complained, and groups of people have talked to legislators, and some people have gone to DOE, and I think there have been pockets of conversation. I don't think there's been anything really this organized. I don't think there's been a single district that has a group like this out there really. I mean, I'm telling you, they're listening. So I think we take the momentum that has begun tonight and get the dialogue, get a serious dialogue going and saying, I've already said to the people I've talked to in the last week, these people aren't playing. They're very serious about this, and we are going to have to respond. And I've got to figure out a way for our board to be able to respond to their constituents and for us to take care of our children without them being hurt. And you have to be a part of that, you being DOE and the legislators. I've said that out loud to them. So and they're having their own conversations now. I mean, they're very concerned. And, you know, people say this is an election year, so we can do this quickly. Nothing happens quickly in a bureaucracy. And if it weren't for the kids, but if we said today opt out and we create our own thing, it's not going to be a good thing that we create, because we'll do it quickly and it'll be haphazard and there won't be anything valid about it. So I'm not suggesting we stop the conversation, but I think it has to be a dialogue. It can't be us just saying we're going to do this and too bad if you don't like it. I think we've got to, and I think you all have got to get your association involved, just like I have to get mine involved. And I think the people in this audience need, whether they like, you know, somebody said they elected you, they don't need to deal with Tallahassee. Well, you elected Tallahassee too. Don't lose sight of that. But you, and I will say this: the people who are appointed in DOE are appointed by those that you elect. So there are lots of connections there, and we need to be really, really thoughtful about how we go about this. I admire the passion, and I have the same. I just have to be in a position that I can't just say we're not going to do it, and I feel a need to help you all not have to do that either. This has to be done intentionally and thoughtfully for it to work and for it to be sustained. That's where I can't give you a plan right now.
I don't want the enthusiasm to go away.
I don't think so.
Run down the priority list simply because people come here tonight or go wherever they go and they see we're not ready to do something at the earliest possible convenience. I recognize how difficult it would be to do that. But I also am old enough to know what it was like when I was growing up in Columbus, Ohio. And we didn't take tests until there was no tomorrow. And some of us made it out and did all right.
Well, and let me, and I understand. And if this board directs me, don't let this conversation die, it's not going to die. But let me just say this, and nobody wants to hear this, I understand. However, Florida's ranking in education has escalated since we started our accountability system. And when we were in school, we weren't competing globally. We weren't. And our kids are now.
Well, you're much older than I am.
Well, that's true. That's true. I forgot that part. Sorry. But, you know, Florida's the only state in 2013 that did anything to narrow the achievement gap between black and white. And it is I'm going to say 4th or 5th in the nation as far as Hispanic students and their education level. We are making strides. The graduation rate's gone up. So as much as we may not like all the testing, there is data out there to show that the accountability system is not all bad. And I haven't heard anybody say that they're anti-accountability. I haven't heard that in all the comments. I think we're just tired of the amount and the time that it takes. And part of the time is, and I've explained this to a few of you, when we started EOCs, we could do the math EOC in one day. All the algebra kids took the algebra EOC. We could do it in one day like we could do the FCAT in one day. Well, then it had to be online. And that's when it started taking more than one day because the capacity to do all that we couldn't do. So there are a lot of elements, and I think this has evolved. I think that not one session of legislation put this together. One group worked on teacher performance pay, which we all know there's no research to say that's a good thing. Another group worked on EOCs, because you ought to have common end-of-course exams. And then another group had already put the FCAT out there. So that's part of the conversation that has to be had. This evolved, and I don't think one group really paid attention to what another group had done, and now we've got this mess. And it didn't get fixed, it didn't get created overnight, and I think to suggest that we can fix it in one fell swoop is probably irresponsible on our part. And I'm a realist, and I think it's unrealistic. But the conversation is happening, and it's because of Lee County that it's happening, so I don't want people to feel like their passion is for naught. I don't see these people giving up. So I think we can continue the conversation in a productive way that will let the state know they're not playing.
Can we look at what we've done so far? It's my understanding that we have pared down the number of tests we're to be giving this school year.
Yes, we have.
Okay, significantly. What about practice testing?
The progress monitoring that's required, and if you're talking about practice testing at schools, I can tell you the message principals have gotten from me, and I think my staff will verify. Stop it. Stop talking about it. Stop stressing kids out about it. Stop it. Just teach the children so they can master the standards. The assessment will take care of itself. That's what they've been told. So practice tests, if they're over the top on those, but I'm not sure if we're confusing practice tests with progress monitoring that is required by the state. We are expected to show that we are monitoring the children so that at the end we're not surprised. We can pretty much predict where children may land. And so if a child does poorly on progress, that's that formative assessment that Ms. Jasper talked about, and the research is very clear. Formative assessment, high expectations, those are the things that improve student achievement. And part of the accountability system, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, is about high expectations. Those are the things that increase student achievement. Formative assessment is one of them. So there's practice tests, and formatives, the difference between formative and summative simply means formative, we focus on one thing or one or two standards. Summative is the whole shebang, and that's what happens when they take the final test. So the formatives are required, it's called progress monitoring, to prepare children for what's to come with the big test.
Okay, and I guess the other thing is, how do we know that we are... Well, I know we have high expectations, but I also know a lot about individual differences. And I think I've said this before. I don't think it's realistic for us to expect all children in the third grade to do the same thing at the same time in the same way. And I know that we have had speakers who tonight have indicated that their frustration is with kids being warehoused in an auditorium or in a cafeteria while other kids are testing. Not being able to get a positive message. And I know that our teachers work so hard, and I know that they are prepared for this year. They've had a ton of professional development. I understand that you've given a message to the leadership at the school, and I know that we have people who are monitoring that to be sure that that's happening. So, you know, I want us to have common sense, I want us to be realistic, and I want us to do, again, what's best for kids. From all of the information that I could gather, I do not see that if we just opt out of everything that we're going to be doing what's right for kids. I'm afraid to do that because I'm afraid that some of those kids, which could include my own grandkids, are going to be caught in that and then maybe penalized in a way that is exactly what we're fighting against. So I think we have to be thoughtful and make sure that we have at least a skeleton plan so that we can move forward and be sure that in it all, we're not, in our zealousness and our passion, hurting the kids in the long run. I mean, does that make sense? And I just have a question. Just show me your fingers. How many of you have contacted our legislators, emailed them, called them? And you got to keep doing that every day. I email them every day. No, I'm not kidding. Because one thing that we can do, we can uphold the law, but we can also change it. And it takes that persistence to do that. And it is an election year. And so there are people who in November might not be reelected if they're not responding. So, Mr. Scott, I don't know if you're ready to take a vote on the motion to amend.
Armstrong has a comment to make.
Please
Yes.
speak into your microphone. I can't hear you.
Yes, Mrs. Dozier, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I have a few comments, actually. First, I got a question for our superintendent. It's just yes or no. You mentioned you talked to the Department of Ed. I'm assuming did Pam Stewart or somebody like that call you?
I've spoken with the commissioner.
That explains a lot.
The conversation was simply about the concerns of the community and this board.
You know, when I was elected, there was a lot of learning curves for me on this board. But the one thing that I have learned more than anything is I don't come to the people and say, well, if you want something to change, you guys go ahead and go to your state legislators and you change it. That's not your job. I'm your voice. We're your voice. We're the ones who make the noise. You elected us. And I keep hearing that we have to have a plan. We need a plan. We need a plan. That's what I've heard so far. I got a plan. I've got a really good plan. Let the teachers teach. That's my plan. These teachers give tests to measure where their students are, and that test that they give also measures themselves, and they use it to help benefit themselves. You know, Mr. Martin sent us something saying the ACT and a few other things in 10th grade would be supplemental for the graduation. Was that correct?
Yes, sir. The two requirements with respect to graduation, which is passage of the 10th grade FCAT, the statute does allow for the substitution of a concordant score on the ACT or SET. And then the second requirement, passage of the Algebra 1 end of course assessment, the statute allows for substitution of a comparative score on the PERT, losing the acronym, Post-Secondary Educational Readiness Test.
Thank you. So there is another way. You know, we talk about our constitutional right and upholding the law. Well, we just sat up here no more than a few months ago and said, you know, the class size amendment, even though it's a statute, it's a law, but we're not going to obey that one. Can't have your cake and eat it too, last time I checked. So to me, for us to go and say, well, let's send something to the legislators, a plan, see if they approve it, that's wrong, because they're the ones who actually, that's what put us in this boat anyways. We're supposed to be fighting this as education leaders. That's what we're supposed to be doing. I tried fighting this a year ago. I got on radio talk shows. I've sat up here and talked about it. I'm done talking. Let's have action. That's what people want. We need action. And a knee slap reaction, well, let's keep the money here locally and put it back in the classrooms. That's not knee slap reaction. That's just called common sense. And I think this is the right move. You know, if Department of Education doesn't like it, or whoever wants to threaten, I mean, I heard the threat. I've been threatened already. You could potentially be removed. I'm a plumber. Go ahead. I walled in worse stink than that before. I'm good. You know, I'm just tired. We're going to hurt the kids. Would you guys want me to? I can go back here in the back and show you two kids. And one of them for sure right now is hurting. My son, when he first started school, I'd go and pick him up every day. And I asked him, how was school? Was it good? Nope. It was great, was his answer. every single day. So he took the test last year. So now when I pick him up after the test, how was school? Yeah, it was okay. What? My son likes school. We're hurting our kids now. We have the ability to be the world-class school system that we keep claiming to be. It's time that we stand up with the community members that's sitting out in front of us, and I promise you, this is a very small portion of them. There's a lot more of them sitting at home right now going, somebody better stand up. We have one of our students sitting right here. We have another student out here that maybe we ought to ask her how much this test is hurting her. She got up here and spoke. You know, what if she doesn't pass it this year? What happens if the new test this year that we're supposed to be taking, what happens if these students don't pass it? Has anybody ever done the research on it? It's got a 70% failure rate. So we're actually failing our students. Now, that's what we're doing. It's about time that we bring this county, take this county back. Are we going to be penalized a little bit? Maybe. Mr. Martin keeps saying there's a potential, but there's no definite, if you do this, that's going to happen. What I do know definitely, if we don't do something, we are going to hurt these students. So I ask each one of my colleagues to reconsider, and let's vote on Tom Scott's original motion, put it back in the teachers' hands, and let's do what's right for this county. But more importantly, our students.
All right, any more discussion?
Yes, is your motion that we opt out of all testing?
State mandated testing. Yes.
State mandated testing.
We have little control. We have little control over what the content of those tests are. Number one, you've heard tonight from a lot of people, they're very confusing and discouraging to students. And frankly, we've been crossed up by the State Department of Education for a number of times in the last 4 years, where they start out with a certain set of criteria and switch it in the middle of the year when students are already on track. That's why I think it needs to be stopped immediately. And trust me, I know there are potential problems and pitfalls, but unless we do something now, we can sit here and roar like little kitty cats in the future and nothing is going to happen. We have to make an impact on what's going on.
Mr. Scott, I just want to tell you one immediate impact. If you opt out of all state-required testing, EOCs are 30% of a student's grade. And that will be an immediate consequence for the children. That could hurt GPA.
I like to go to the Constitution to find out what we're supposed to be doing. And when you look at it, it's Article 9, Section 4. Item, please. Okay. Section 1B of Section 4 of the Article 9 in the Florida Constitution. The school board shall operate, control, and supervise all free public schools within the school district and determine the rate of school district taxes within the limits prescribed herein. There's the problem. Every year I've been on this board, our ability to tax has been reduced by the state legislature. So we end up having less money dealing with more students every year. And now we're pressed about how are we going to build new schools, which we desperately need. We're not going to go out and rent a warehouse and put a few desks in there and hope that that solves the problem. It's not going to work that way. That's the reason I brought it up tonight. I think we have to do something or choose that we're not going to do something. There is no middle ground. There's a delaying tactic, but unless there's a real strong direction given about when that adjustment needs to be finished, and we have a plan, I can't go along with that. So that's my 2 cents worth. Any other discussion?
Thank you.
Okay, so we're now on the amendment to my motion from Mrs. Morgan. Did you settle on a date specific?
My understanding was that the date specific is the second board meeting in October.
Okay.
I don't know the date.
I
Does
can
anybody know
find
the date?
that date in just a second here. Thank you. And we may want to confirm, since the nature of the motion to amend was somewhat revised, that Ms. Dozier still provides a second.
Did you hear that, Ms. Dozier?
Yes, I did.
Are you still in a position to second that amended motion?
I am.
All right. So we're now going to vote on the amended motion, which delays a final solution to October 21st board action meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. The motion fails 3-2. So now the direction is to...
Now you're back to the main motion, sir. Your original
which was
motion.
my verbiage.
You can proceed with discussion and a vote.
Okay, move the board opt out of state-mandated testing beginning immediately for the benefit of administrators, teachers, and most importantly, students whose educational growth has not been enhanced as a result of such testing. Is there discussion on this? I see none. I hear none. We'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes 3-2. We are not out of the woods yet. Okay? We are not out of the woods yet. There is work that needs to be done to implement what the board has decided upon tonight. I appreciate those who were in support of the motion, and I appreciate those who were opposed. It's a tough question, but I firmly believe if we didn't start, we'd be back here. Well, someone will be back here in another year talking about, let's take another couple of months and decide on it. That's not going to work. And it's for children, not for us. So. I have one more item to bring up in board member comments. And you heard me tell you several times that I was going to write a letter to the governor and demand a repayment of monies that we should have received by virtue of the constitutional amendment for class size. Amy Desamores has gone through the numbers. And dear Governor Scott, I write to you today asking the state of Florida to honor the commitment to Lee County voters made in the adoption of the class size amendment to the state constitution in 2002. Language in the amendment, Article 9, 1A, is clear that upon implementation, the state would bear costs to any district that would not have been necessary without the amendment becoming law. Our finance staff estimates the costs incurred by Lee County taxpayers since school year 2003 and 4 to be in compliance with the amendment at approximately $164 million in additional expense. As chairman of the board for the school district of Lee County, I'm requesting the state of Florida provide a refund to the district at its earliest opportunity. These funds will provide relief for expenses that have consistently been increased by mandated actions of the state legislature and Florida Department of Education. In addition to a request for reimbursement of costs associated with implementation, I ask that you, the legislature, and the Florida Department of Education do all in your power to minimize further intrusion into the authority given to local boards of education outlined in Article 9, particularly Sections 1, 4, and 5 of the state constitution. Sincerely, me. So. Mr. Armstrong.
You forgot to add something in that letter that you wrote. We only accept cash. I don't want their checks. Well, first let me, and I'm sorry, but I had to take my jacket off. It's getting a little warm in here. First, before I go into this whole discussion, I did want to talk to Dr. Graham about one other thing. Last week, I had a chance to go to North Fort Myers Academy of the Arts, and I was just driving around to stopping at a few of the schools. And ironically, I stopped in. They just got done doing the very first fire drill. Well, we also had our inspector who was there making sure everything was done correctly, and I'm happy to say he was there. He made sure everything was, and they didn't know who he was at first, and they made sure he had to stay in his car. So it was a great start that how they was handling things, so kudos to North Myers Academy of the Arts for handling that. I also had the opportunity to go to a couple other schools. I went to Ida Baker's football game Friday, which it got lightninged out. I also went to North High, went to Mariner. Both schools seem to be doing real well there. Got to walk around and talk to a lot of different people, even Ray, if some of you, there was a student that he came here once upon a time and talked to us. Doing very well. Now to the testing. Guys, awfully quiet out there now. I'm happy to see that we took this step. I was told that, in order to make an omelet, sometimes you do got to break a few eggs. Well, the rotten eggs, and we're sending them up to Tallahassee. I'm done with it. These kids deserve better, whether I'm here or not here. These teachers work very diligently every year for our students. I've gone over to teachers or talked to them on the phone. It's 9 o'clock at night. They're grading tests. These students are stressed. We've heard it from them. It's about time that we become the world-class school system that we keep talking about. And that means the board takes the leadership role like we did tonight. But this isn't an effort on our part. This is your part. You as the community stood behind us, stood next to us, and sometimes tonight you even stood underneath of us to hold us up and remind us you need to rise to the occasion. We're counting on you. So, my hat's off to each one of you for showing up and showing your support. On behalf of myself, but most importantly, on behalf of David Armstrong and Catherine Armstrong, those are both my kids in the back. Thank you for being here and helping doing what's right for these kids. That's all, Mr. Scott.
Okay. Ms. Morgan.
I would like to acknowledge that Dr. Graham, Dr. Spiro, Dr. Bohatch, and Ms. Mufti have done a terrific job making certain that the athlete transfer policy is in place and is being effected. So they've been proactive from out of the gate at the start of the school year, and I just want to appreciate their efforts on that. I also want to compliment Jean LaFountain, who was appointed this evening as Director of Intervention Services. I've sat on the Head Start Policy Council for the last 2 years, and some of you may remember that just this past year, the federal government acknowledged the quality of the Head Start program in this district by giving them the opportunity to extend their grant from 3 to 5 years, which is quite an achievement. And I have to say that I think, having sat in the policy meetings, that the Head Start program in this district is absolutely top drawer, and it's a well-deserved promotion for Ms. LaFountain, and I have she has developed a very strong staff, and I have every confidence that the program will continue to excel and grow. And along that same line, I am pleased to say that the district is participating in the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grant, which, if we receive it, will enable us to expand our early pre-K seats by 72. I know that's not a lot, but that's important, and it's targeted at our highest need children in our highest need districts. And I want to echo that partnerships are going to enable this district to accomplish things for kids that we cannot do alone. We have to work with other people, and this grant is a perfect example of what we can accomplish. 5 child care centers, 4 family child care centers, 72 kids may have an opportunity to get early childhood as a result of this partnership, the partnership effort on this grant. So I want to acknowledge that. Also, I want to compliment the maintenance group, the maintenance team, maintenance department, because I heard very, very kind words about their work on getting the new portables for Head Start in place, getting the new bathroom in. And I know they did it on a tight deadline and on a tight budget, and I just want to acknowledge their support of the Head Start program, because it's not just about the teachers in the classroom, it's about everybody in the program, in this district, working to support individual programs. And then finally, I'm going to go back and reiterate my comments. I support Florida standards because I think standards are, nationally normed standards, are critical for the success of the students in this district. This state was at close to the bottom of student achievement in this country in the 90s, and it's the accountability movement that got us to think critically about what we were doing, thinking critically about what was happening in demographic groups, to really focus on student achievement and make decisions about what was in the best interests of kids. And in order for, once you have standards, you have to have assessments, and you must have reliable, normed, validated assessments that demonstrate you are doing your job, that inform you about how you are doing your job, that inform your children about. Assessments are opportunities. They are not punishments. Assessment is an opportunity to establish where you are and where it is you need to go. It is not a punishment for something that you haven't accomplished. The problem we have is a rush to implement assessments that have not been nationally normed, not been validated, and that's my issue. And I don't see, frankly, how opting out in Lee County advances the interests of our children. I also want to point out that we are not in violation of a state statute with our class size average decision, because we are a school choice district, and our average class size places us within the parameters established by the school district. Did you know there was a dog in here?
Service dog.
Oh, is it a service dog? Okay. I like the other board members, I applaud your passion. You know, it has put this conversation front and center at the state level with our legislators and with the Department of Education. You've accomplished what you wanted, but I share the superintendent's concern and regret that we have taken this preemptive action. So that concludes my comments.
Mrs. Dozier,
Yes.
you have comments?
Yes. I want to thank all of the parents that were there and all of the parents that are continuing to advocate so passionately for their children. I apologize about not being there in person. I had a fall in an airport, and I've been in doctor's offices all day, and I was advised to not be at the meeting tonight. And I apologize for not being there because this is a very passionate issue with me. The passion didn't start 2 weeks ago. It didn't start tonight. It started many weeks ago. However, again, I thank all of you for being there. I thank all of you for your voices. But I hope that we have not done anything that is going to be detrimental to our kids. That is the only thing that I am extremely worried about. I am extremely, our position is to look out for every single student. And I can assure every parent that I advocate for the best interests of the children, and I have talked with the legislators about the high-stakes testing. I don't know how Dr. Graham is going to deal with this. I wish her all the best. However, I would like to ask a question of Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin, I believe we violated protocol tonight because this was a vote and there was not any opportunities for public comment during that. Is that correct?
You're correct. There should have been an opportunity for public comment before the vote on the motion because it was not a matter on the agenda.
Yes, sir. I believe I thought that was correct. Dr. Graham, I want to tell you that I think the opening of school went very smoothly, but it was for a lot of reasons. I think the students themselves, first and foremost, we've got some of the best, the brightest, and the students that are going to be some of the most successful students, I think, in the world. I thank our parents for the support that they give to the school district, and I thank our teachers, administrative staff, and all of our support people because it takes everyone together to get the school district open. And the opening was smooth. We've had a couple of hiccups with bus stops and so forth. However, for all practical purposes, it was a very smooth opening. On behalf of my family, I would like to extend sympathy for the family that of the student that we lost due to a bike accident, and I want to send our prayers to that family. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to congratulate Ms. Fisher, and I look forward to working with you for the next 4 years. And board members, I thank you for the discussion that we had tonight, and I thank you for keeping it civil among ourselves. And I know that this was a difficult discussion for us to have, and I thank you for that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Dozier. And this afternoon we had a presentation on the draft of the strategic plan, which will drive our budget. I understand that a lot of the testing is connected to that. I want to thank Mrs. Morgan for representing the board on the steering committee and really having a lot of input, I heard, to get the plan to the point it was. And I think it's the best roadmap that we have had in many years to help us move forward effectively and efficiently and in the best interest of the children. I, too, made some school visits at the beginning of the school year, And you know, it does take a village. Parents had the kids ready, the kids were ready, enthusiastic and excited. Everything went smoothly. I didn't visit one school where anyone said they had really any glitches. And so I want to thank Dr. Graham and all of the staff, the bus drivers, our food service workers who had the food ready on the first day, and just everyone who is involved, because that is really what it's all about. As adults, we have a responsibility to raise our children and to raise them in a way that they will ultimately be prepared to be the people who will take care of this community in the future. And it's not so far in the future either. They grow quickly. Congratulations to Ms. LaFountain and Mr. Brown. And I had some, yes, thank you. And I had some thoughts about the testing. I heard things tonight like it's over the top, it's out of control, it's hurting kids and teachers, it's disrupting families, it's costing a lot of money. And then I heard something about the test that we are proposing to be using, having a 70%, did you say, Mr. Armstrong, failure rate? Well, I think I said a couple weeks ago at a previous board meeting, the tests, according to my research and the information that I have been able to gather, are designed for kids to fail. And that's why I voted the way I did, although, believe me, I have an upset stomach right now because I know we need a plan. I know we need a plan, but I also know that we need a starting point. And we have been out of control for a long time, so we will do whatever we need to do to make it right for the kids. And I think that's the important thing. We want an assessment. We need an assessment. I believe that the teachers will go on and teach the kids the skills they need so that they will master the standards. I see a board member, an impending board member sitting in the audience, and I learned from her over the summer when she spoke about how no matter what else is going on, the teachers go on and they teach the children, and they find a way to integrate the information. So if this is our window of opportunity, I hope we're going to make the best of it and do everything we can to make sure that we have a normed, validated assessment that's been tested and is right for our kids here in Lee County, Florida. And I want to say that I'm very confident in our teaching staff and our support staff because I know that the kids are in good hands, and I see that the parents agree with that. And that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Okay, first I'd like to say that I am in favor of the decision made tonight on testing. As a student of the Lee County School District, I have suffered through hours and hours of testing, and I think it is not logical to hold a student back just because they don't pass a test. And especially as a high school senior, that is crucial to me. And we've all been saying that we should trust our teachers tonight, and as a student, I'm going to say that I do trust my teachers. I trust the assessments they give me, and I trust that they justify my intelligence and what I'm capable of. And I'd like to thank everyone for inviting me here tonight, and it was very interesting to hear all the opinions, and I agree with everything that was said tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, do you have any comments?
No, sir, thank you.
Dr. Graham?
I just want to be clear to any principals or teachers who are listening, we have not opted out of the standards, and so it's important that they continue to teach those standards, and we'll figure out what the assessment is. I am gravely concerned about the decision that was made tonight. I work at the will of the board, and I will do what I need to do to try and make some sense of this, but I have some serious concerns about what's next. But it's very important that teachers and administrators understand nothing has changed as far as what needs to be happening in the classroom with instruction. And it's an interesting time to serve as the leader of this district. That's what I'll say tonight.
I want to add one thing that I didn't say. On Monday, I wrote a letter to our entire legislative delegation asking them to come meet with us nose to nose down in the pit and discuss the issues that are critically important from our side of the table. Thus far, I've had only 2 responses. And I think most of them are around here, so maybe there'll be a silver pickup truck running up to a few parking lots and getting a commitment from those people to be here. Not their aides, and if there are any aides left in the audience, it's not that we don't like you, but we need to talk to the people that are going to be there making the decisions. And so I'll leave it at that. Well, our next meeting will be on September 9th. School board briefing meeting at 2 p.m., a special meeting for public hearing to adopt the fiscal year 15 final budget at 5:05 p.m., as well as a school board action meeting at 6 p.m. At this point, having no other business to come before the body, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All in favor? Motion carries. We're out.
Aye.
Aye.